The Mummy's Revenge. When you hear this, what do you think of? A scary movie with Brendan Fraser, maybe a cheesy B-movie from the 50s? Well, whatever you think of, it was probably influenced by the myth that disturbed mummies will rise from their graves and take revenge on those who woke them. It's such an ingrained part of our culture that we don't even question it anymore. But where did it come from? While there is no evidence to support this claim, there are plenty of stories about mummies coming to life and wreaking havoc. Some tell of them rising up and killing whoever disturbed them. Others claim they bring a plague upon the town that houses them. And the scariest ones describe them as vengeful spirits possessing unsuspecting victims. But it gets worse. People blame mummified remains for disasters at museums around the world, even for death itself. One museum guard was convinced his night shift co-worker died because he had looked an Egyptian mummy in the eyes too long. So let's get into the creepiest curse of all. Let's talk about the many ways a mummy might kill you, from plagues to possessions. One of the most common mummy revenge tales involves them bringing a plague to the town or city where they reside. This story goes back centuries, thousands of years before the first movie about the subject. The idea likely started in Egypt, where the dead were kept. There were elaborate burial rituals meant to ensure the body would not be disturbed after death. And it wasn't just about respect for the deceased. There was a very practical reason behind these rituals. Egyptians believed that the body contained the soul of the person after they died, and that's why mummies weren't left to decompose. They wanted to preserve the body so the soul could live inside it. When someone broke into an ancient Egyptian tomb, they risked angering the spirit within and facing dire consequences. This may have led to the belief that if a mummy wasn't handled correctly, it could unleash a plague on the living. In 1826, a man named Giovanni Battista Belzoni found a tomb full of mummies near Cairo. He wrote in his journal, "We had scarcely entered the second chamber when we heard a violent blow on the coffin of the lady of the house, which is made of stone. We all jumped back frightened. Nobody dared to go near it, and we left the place in terror." Belzoni may have been the first to publish this story, but it's unlikely he made it up. Who would dare fake an encounter with an angry spirit? This wasn't the only time something like this happened either. Another tomb robber wrote in their diary about hearing chains dragging metal moans in the middle of the night. However, eyewitness accounts of mummies coming to life aren't the only evidence of this curse. When Napoleon's army invaded Egypt, they brought scientists along to document their findings. One of those scientists, a man named Frederick Para, wrote of a hospital where every patient went insane after being exposed to mummies. Even though none of these reports can be verified, the legend of the vengeful mummy lives on. Even today, some people believe that if you steal a mummy from its resting place, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. The rise of the angry mummy. As far back as ancient Egypt, people have told stories of mummies rising from their graves and wreaking havoc. These vengeful beings killed anyone who disturbed their slumber and wouldn't stop until they were back in their graves. In modern times, one of the most well-known examples comes from the British Museum. In 1898, visitors reported seeing the shriveled hand of an Egyptian mummy move. While there is no proof this actually happened, the museum took down the mummy out of fear. They didn't put it back up until 1965. That's a long time to keep a display case empty over fear of an angry mummy. But again, people claim this isn't the only time mummies have risen from their display cases. One version of the myth claims that if you look an Egyptian mummy in the eyes, you will be killed. You might think this sounds ridiculous, but how many times have you turned away from a display case at a museum only to glance back and see something moving in the corner of your eye? It's enough to make anyone wonder if maybe looking a mummy in the eyes isn't a good idea. But there is one more thing that will anger a mummy: stealing a piece of them. Legend has it that if you take something off a mummy, it will seek revenge. This could be anything from a finger to a toe, and sometimes even an entire head. No one knows why removing body parts would set mummies off more than other disturbances, but that doesn't stop people from believing it. Museums around the world take these myths seriously. They often refuse to let visitors take anything from the display cases, even small things like string or cloth. Sometimes, though, people aren't satisfied with only taking something small. Fingers and toes seem to be the preferred body parts to steal, but sometimes people want more. And it's not just about getting caught either. The penalties for stealing from a museum are steep. Removing a mummy's finger could land you in prison for several years. Still, people do it. Many thieves even return the items only to be haunted by the mummy. Stories abound of people who stole from museums and then experienced strange events. Some say they were cursed, while others claim they were haunted. These stories are hard to prove, but they add fuel to the fire of the mummy's revenge myth. Museum murders. In addition to the vengeful spirits of mummies, there are also stories of real-life murders committed by mummies. Of course, we now know that mummies aren't actually alive, so how could they commit murder? Well, the answer lies in the way these stories are told. There are a lot of legends about mummies coming to life and killing those who disturb them, but there is one that stands out above the rest. It tells of an Egyptian princess named Hetepheres. According to the story, she was entombed with her servants and treasures. Centuries later, someone broke into her tomb and took a piece of her mummy. Soon after, they fell ill and died. There have been many similar stories throughout history, and they all follow the same basic plot. Someone steals a piece of a mummy, and soon after, they become sick and die. But the truth is, there's no link between grave robbing and bad luck. If there were, then every grave robber would be dead. Still, people continue to tell these stories, likely because they want to believe in something beyond science. After all, who could blame them? It's always exciting to think about what might be lurking in the shadows. Now you might be thinking, how does a mummy kill someone? Surely they don't just reach out of their display case and strangle the thief, do they? Well, it turns out that's not how they do it. Instead, the vengeful mummies use more subtle methods to get rid of those who have wronged them. For example, one theory claims that if you take something from a mummy, it will cause you to be haunted for the rest of your life. This haunting could drive you mad, leading you to your demise. Others say that if you touch a mummy, it will drain the life force from your body, causing you to become withered and old before your time. These tales may sound far-fetched, but they're rooted in ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. To them, the body was just a vessel for the soul, and when it was disturbed, the soul became angry and sought revenge. In some cases, people claim to have seen ghosts of mummies moving through museums at night. Others say they've heard chains dragging metal moans echoing through the halls. But perhaps the most terrifying story comes from those who claim to have been possessed by malevolent spirits while standing next to mummies. Of course, there's no evidence to support these claims. But it's easy to see how someone could be scared into believing anything while standing in front of an ancient mystery. Mummy Dearest. There are many stories of mummies coming to life and wreaking havoc. In fact, it's become such a part of our culture that few people even question it anymore. But the truth is, there's no evidence to support these claims. While there are many tales of mummies rising from their graves and killing those who disturbed them, there's never been any proof that it's happened. However, that hasn't stopped people from trying to verify these stories. In the early 1900s, a man named Howard Carter uncovered the tomb of the Egyptian king Tutankhamun. As soon as he opened the tomb, strange things began to happen. First, one of Carter's workers died suddenly. Then another fell ill and passed away soon after. Rumors spread that Tutankhamun's tomb was cursed, and soon enough, everyone was looking for answers. Scientists were called in to investigate, but they couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. Still, people continued to speculate about the curse, and soon enough, it became international news. Ultimately, though, there's no evidence that Tutankhamun's tomb was cursed. It's likely that the rumors started because people wanted to believe in something beyond science. After all, who could blame them? It's always exciting to think about what might be lurking in the shadows. So the next time you visit a museum and see a mummy, remember that it's just an ancient mystery waiting to be uncovered. And while it may be fun to imagine what might happen if one came to life, it's important to remember that there's no evidence that it ever has or ever will.